Hello and welcome back, and today I want to make a video that I was really kind of hoping that I'd never have to make. Today I want to show you exactly how to use any hard drives or SSDs that you want to use to any way you want in the Synology 2025 series. We're going to be using a DS925 Plus, but all of the steps in today's video will work with any 2025 generation Synology NAS, and indeed even previous generations prior to that. But the reason we're focusing on the 25s, of course, is because of Synology's change in hard drive and SSD support on this new generation and later. Now, there's going to be a big disclaimer here at the top end about, who should use this and who shouldn't, and just what exactly is being done. But if all you've come for is to learn about exactly how this is done, there are chapters along the bottom of the screen to help you. But I implore you, please take a few moments to listen to this introduction because it is really, really important. Now, the reason I said I didn't want to make this is largely down to when Synology launched these series of devices, they gave assurances to a lot of users that there is verification taking place with third-party vendors to add other hard drives to the compatibility lists. However, as I've detailed in other videos, not only is this kind of tough to go along with, given they've supported Seagate and WD and Toshiba and more on their generation of devices for previous years already, but also because a lot of the hardware in Synology NAS devices is the same hardware we have seen in previous generations. So saying that the new generation of devices that are using hardware from previous generations is now somehow not utilizing new Seagate and WD drives that were arriving for supported on the older gen is hard to swallow. On top of that, although this may be being seen as a move by the brand to move verification to the vendors, the WD, the Seagates, whatever, rather than they do all of the testing themselves by mark of efficiency, regardless of that, users want to be able to use their own storage drives. And it is thanks to people like Dave Russell on GitHub, who's provided this incredible script. We talked about it before here on the channel with a lot of his soft mods and fixes for Synology's platform. All of today's guide comes from him. Full credit for this video goes to him. There's links to the GitHub article and a lot of the command line that we're going to be utilizing in today's video all below. I recommend you check out his list, his repository of different fixes there, and of course support him via a myriad of means on there. Next up, it's important to understand, although this is very soft script modifications, and in one case just changing how the system and when the system accesses a particular database, it's worth keeping in mind that by doing this, you are almost certainly going to be utilizing your system outside of Synology's official support of their product. So that could mean that if you do encounter a problem with your system down the road, not necessarily related to using third-party drives, this may invalidate any support or warranty provided by the brand on your solution. I'm not going to, we could debate this in the comments at the end of time, but just keep that factor in mind when pursuing something like this. But ultimately, you want to use drives of your choosing, and right now Synology has still yet to, at the time of recording, add other drives to their official support compatibility list for systems like this one, the DS925. I do also recommend, I'll leave a link in the description as well, to check in the latest updates on compatibility on this system and others that will allow you to check if perhaps the drives that you are considering buying already works on this system. Last thing to keep in mind, what I'm going to be showing you today works as of DSM 7.2 in the version I'm running on the DS925. However, for further updates for security, balancing on the system, or just general system stability, possibly can undo the work. Again, later in the video, I'll be showing you how to regularly run this script on a task. Once again, thanks, Dave. But keep in mind that there is the potential that an update to the system could invalidate this. It's highly unlikely given the way the script is being implemented here, but it's not completely out of the realms of possibility. So maybe this isn't going to be so much of a bother for you if you're running your own system, but if you are setting the system up for others, maybe you're a sysadmin or you are deploying a large-scale server and you need a fix to get rid of unrecognized drive blocks, and later on down the line these do return their head, it could be problematic for you. So do keep in mind that, one, do not run this unless you have another backup in place of your data, but moreover, be aware that this is potentially a fix that can be undone by Synology themselves in updates. Small percentage, but not impossible. So, did you skip ahead to this point or did you listen to that disclaimer? Let me know in the comments which one you did, but let's crack on. Now, one of the earliest barriers people might be thinking about when setting up a new Synology 2025 system with unverified drives is that at the moment, you cannot even create a storage pool or install DSM if you're going to use unsupported drives like this 30 TB here. A lot of users were worried that you would have to get the device set up with at least one verified drive before you could run the script and do more. Now, if you've already got a Synology NAS that has Synology hard drives inside, you can skip this first step. But if you purchase the device on its own, no Synology drives, and you want to go straight into unverified drive utility, luckily there's some steps for that. Thanks, Dave. Let's crack on. First things first, set up your Synology NAS on the local area network. You don't necessarily need to have any drives inside, just make sure the system is up and running. And as you can see here on screen, the system is unable to use the drive I've put inside to begin the DSM installation. So what you need to do now is open up a new tab, and we need to enable Telnet remote access services on this device into the backend. You need to use the command here on screen, but make sure to replace where it says NAS-IP within the brackets with your IP of your own NAS. In my case, 192.168.0.112, but it will differ depending on your own setup. Next up, you need to open that PuTTY application we talked about earlier. Open up the application and at the top, enter the IP of your NAS. Once you've entered that, make sure to select the Telnet option if you're going to use the Telnet service, and then from there, click OK to make your way into the back end of your Synology NAS. Now, the username we're going to use is root. That is pretty much the all-powerful back end, all in lowercase ROOT. Now, the password, which by the way, when you type it, you won't be able to see, is 101-0101, and then from there click enter. After that, you need to enter the following command, and this will allow the system to remove, completely ignore the checking that the system is going to perform in order to check if your drive is on a verified list and allow you to install DSM by default. From this point, you should be able to go ahead and conveniently install the DSM installation onto your unverified drives. Installation normally takes around 10 minutes or so, and then after that you can go ahead and create your admin user account and start making your way into the section that allows you to create your storage area. Special thanks to Alex of Chaos on Reddit, who is also recommended on Dave's guides, that recommends another Telnet command that you can use to skip the disk compatibility at this stage. However, I did have mixed utility in it working, so if it works for you, that's great. Right, so you've initialized DSM, you've got the system booted up there into the DSM desktop, you create yourself a user account, but you've gone into the storage manager, and even though you could set up DSM, unfortunately, you still aren't able to create storage pools out of third-party drives. Now, this is where we're going to have to get into some of that scripting, and we're going to need some tools in order to get the job done. Obviously, you've got your web browser, you've got your desktop machine or your laptop or whatever, but another tool you're going to need is something to play around with Telnet and or SSH, and for that we always recommend using an application called PuTTY. You're going to need to be on the local area network of the device, and you're going to need to have a user account with administrative level powers, but apart from that, that is really all you're going to need. Make sure that you've got the drives that you plan to use already installed inside the system. The reason for that will become clear later, but there's no point running these steps until you've already installed the unverified drives first. So let's crack over to the laptop. The next steps are about getting the Synology NAS to add whatever drives you've got inside the system to its supported database. Now, in order to do this, we have to return to SSH and our tool PuTTY here. The first thing you need to do is make your way into the control panel, and then from there, make sure to enable SSH or terminal settings here, depending on your own setup and your tool of choice that you're going to be utilizing. I went for the SSH tool here, but it's really up to you. Once you've clicked save, make your way back into PuTTY, and then from PuTTY enter your IP once again and make your way into the system. go ahead and log in with the super user account details that you created when setting up DSM. So this is not the root username. This is the one that you created during that DSM installation. From there, we need to create a new directory on the system. Now, if you're running this multiple times, that directory will have already been created. But the first time you do it, you are creating a new directory where this script is going to be downloaded to and actioned from. Once you've followed those first 2 to 3 steps that are listed below that gradually create and add access rights to this folder for your user, next step is to download the synodatabase.sh script from Dave Russell's GitHub there. This will do it automatically from that database. So make sure you have internet services enabled. From there, you then allow the next step that will allow you to further modify and allow the database to be kind of checked against for verification there in the background. Finally, you run the third script here, sudo chmod 750/otp /syno_hdd_db.sh, what a catchy name. And this will run the script, which will then add all of the unverified drives that are currently connected onto the system to appear as verified. It effectively updates the system and just says, don't worry, these are cool, bro. And then at that point, you can go ahead and run the final syno HD script, and that's really it. At this point, it may already be showing on DSM that these drives now are verified. If they don't, go ahead and restart your Synology NAS, and then they should appear as they now appear on that database. At this point, you are now able to create storage pools on hard drives, storage pools on M.2 NVMEs, SSD caching, create shared drives, and pretty much all of the features and services that, by the way, also include RAID recovery and RAID expansion on unverified drives, thanks to this script. Now, what happens if after you've installed a few drives in there and you've had your RAID up and running, that a few years down the line, you don't think, do you know what, I want to add more drives to this RAID, but they are different drives. Do you have to run the whole script again? Well, yes and no. You don't have to run all the script. You just have to run about 50% of it to update that existing database with the new drives you want to add. So you need to make sure that you've got the drives connected into your system. So if you've got empty bays that you want to use for these new drives you purchase down the line, install them in the available bays. Then when you see that the system has already seen them as unverified and unusable, not a huge surprise, you need to go back into SSH and only run the commands that allow you to access where that drive database is located, and then from there run the updated script from Dave, and then from there it will update and add the brand new drives. That extends, by the way, to if you want to utilize M.2 NVMEs. That's right, this script isn't just about adding hard drives and unverified hard drives and allowing the system to use them, but it also allows you to use unverified M.2 NVMEs and allows you to use them as both storage pools and as caching there. Now, you can restart the system to make sure this takes effect, but ultimately, because you've changed the database that the system utilizes to check a verified and unverified drive, rebooting shouldn't make any difference there. However, what about over time? Because down the line, Synology may well constitute updates that block this, or at the very least, that one day your drives that were once appearing verified are now no longer verified. Is there a way in order to let us run this script regularly and semi-autonomously? Well, thank you, there is, and a part of this is thanks to Synology themselves, and of course, Dave. Mwah, peace out, my brother. Let's crack on. We're setting up a regular task that when the system reboots, it always runs this script and adds any new drives over time that may have fallen off the verified list. Now, running a scheduled task for this script that will consistently and regularly rerun this script every time the system reboots is quite straightforward. You use the Synology's own notification and scheduled task process. Go into Control Panel and then from there Task Scheduler, and then create a brand new task. This is a task that's going to be run on a system action and is going to be based on a user-defined script. This means this will action this script when this action happens. For this triggered task, you need to make sure that you've selected user-defined script. You give the script a name. I've just called it a hard drive database or whatever suits you. It's not too much of a problem. Make sure to select root as the root user, as this needs to be run at the highest level at the back end during initialization, and then select boot up as the event that triggers the task. Don't touch that tick that says enabled, and then after that, click the task settings. And then from there, you're going to need to enter the script linked in the description below, or as you can see here on screen. Some of these are just kind of repeating what we've already done, so don't be surprised if it seems a little odd that we're recreating any directories that are already there. But ultimately, this is just going to rerun the script automatically every time the system reboots. The reason you do this, of course, is Synology may run an update. And ultimately, it means that as new drives are added and the system reboots, then from there, the script update will allow for newer and unverified drives to be useful and usable in the 925 Plus. And that's really it. Now, again, as I've mentioned lengthily in the introduction, make sure you have a backup in place if you're going to choose to do this. Also, I do think Synology over time are going to start adding more drives than their own to the verified compatibility lists. Maybe you're watching this a year in the future and you know the answer. There's the comments, let me know. Ultimately, regardless of how and when Synology do add third-party drives to that verified support list, I don't think it's going to come soon enough for everyone, and there's always going to be gaps. So there is an argument here, for example, that want to use a Synology NAS for surveillance, that right now there are no surveillance certified drives, that is heavy write, low read drives on that compatibility list, things like WD Purple or Seagate Skyhawk drives. These would be great to add into this system, and it's a script like Dave's here that will allow us to get the job done. Now, if you found this video helpful, and if you want to learn more about this, use the links to the GitHub pages of Dave Russell's right now in order to make the most of them. Obviously, it'd be great if you could support this channel. That's lovely. There's viable links below. How it allows us to keep the lights on. But realistically, we got to thank the people that have actually done the work for this. And if you've watched a video, by the way, showing this script and they've not called out the people that have done the damn work, tell me, tell them in the comments, and tell them they need to add those links. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.